I sat at my mother's mahogany dining table surrounded by extended family for their monthly Sunday dinner. My mother, Patricia, raised her wine glass and announced to everyone that my older brother Marcus just bought a stunning penthouse downtown. She then turned to me with a disappointed expression and loudly declared how embarrassing it was that her 32-year-old son still rents a tiny apartment while his younger brother owns luxury real estate. The entire table erupted in laughter as I gripped my fork, watching Marcus smirk smugly across from me. The familiar weight of disappointment settled on my shoulders as I arrived at my childhood home in suburban Denver that afternoon. The same colonial-style house with its perfectly manicured lawn and pristine white shutters that had witnessed countless family gatherings where I somehow always fell short of expectations. I could smell the roast beef and garlic mashed potatoes wafting from the kitchen as I walked through the front door, knowing full well what awaited me inside. My mother, Patricia, 64 years old, and a former real estate agent who had built her entire identity around appearances and social status, greeted me with that particular smile she reserved for occasions when she planned to showcase my shortcomings. Her silver hair was perfectly styled, her makeup flawless, despite spending the entire day cooking. She wore her favorite navy blue dress with the pearl necklace that had belonged to my grandmother, the one she only brought out when she wanted to impress. My father, Robert, sat in his recliner reading the newspaper, as he had every Sunday for the past 20 years, since retiring from his accounting firm. At 67, he had perfected the art of staying invisible during family conflicts, burying himself behind the sports section whenever tensions began to rise. He offered me a brief nod and a weak smile before returning to an article about the Denver Broncos. Marcus arrived 15 minutes after me, with his wife Jessica making an entrance that could have been choreographed for maximum impact. At 29, my younger brother possessed the kind of effortless charisma that had opened doors for him since childhood. His 6-foot frame was perfectly fitted in an expensive charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His dark hair was styled with the kind of precision that suggested regular visits to an upscale salon, and his confident smile revealed teeth that had clearly benefited from professional whitening. Jessica, 27, and stunning in that carefully curated way that Instagram influencers had mastered, glided into the room, wearing a designer dress that hugged her figure perfectly. Her blonde hair cascaded in loose waves over her shoulders, and her makeup looked professionally applied. She carried herself with the poise of someone who had never doubted her place in the world, her manicured fingers already reaching for her phone to document every moment for her social media followers. The rest of the family rounded out our monthly gathering. Uncle Tony, my father's younger brother, had driven over from his house in Lakewood with his wife Sandra and their twin teenage daughters Emma and Grace. At 58, Tony retained the boisterous personality that had made him popular in high school and successful in his insurance business. Sandra, a kindergarten teacher with infinite patience for chaos, helped my mother set the table, while keeping an eye on the twins who were busy taking selfies in the living room. Emma and Grace, both 17, and mirror images of each other, except for Emma's preference for black nail polish, and Grace's love of bright pink lip gloss, whispered and giggled as they scrolled through their phones. They treated family dinners like social events to be endured rather than enjoyed, but they always perked up when drama unfolded between the adults. Cousin Derek, 25, and fresh out of law school, sat at the dining room table reviewing notes on his laptop until the last possible moment. As the newest attorney in the family, he carried himself with the earnest intensity of someone determined to prove his worth through academic achievement and professional success. His thick-rimmed glasses and perfectly pressed button-down shirt completed the image of a young lawyer ready to conquer the world. As for me, Lawrence, I worked as a commercial property investment analyst for a mid-sized firm downtown. My job involved evaluating potential real estate acquisitions, analyzing market trends, and preparing detailed financial reports for investors considering multi-million-dollar deals. It was steady work that paid well and utilized my finance degree, but it lacked the glamour that my family seemed to value above all else. I had deliberately chosen to live modestly in a one-bedroom apartment in Capitol Hill, driving a reliable Toyota Corolla instead of the luxury vehicles that Marcus favored. My wardrobe consisted of practical business attire, purchased from department stores, rather than designer boutiques. I preferred saving and investing my money rather than spending it on status symbols that impressed other people, but added little genuine value to my life. During the cocktail hour before dinner, conversation naturally gravitated toward Marcus and his latest achievements. He worked as a regional sales manager for a technology company, a position that required him to charm clients and close deals through sheer force of personality. His success in sales had earned him recognition within his company and a substantial income that he never hesitated to mention during family gatherings. Patricia moved through the room like a gracious hostess, ensuring everyone had drinks while steering conversation toward topics that would showcase Marcus in the most favorable light. She asked about his recent business trip to Los Angeles, his promotion prospects, and the new clients he had been courting. Marcus responded to each question with practiced ease, weaving stories that highlighted his professional accomplishments and social connections. I found myself relegated to the periphery of these conversations, occasionally asked polite questions about my own work that were clearly perfunctory rather than genuine expressions of interest. When I mentioned a successful commercial property analysis I had completed the previous week, the topic shifted quickly back to Marcus's latest sales figures and the expensive dinner he had enjoyed with potential clients. Jessica documented everything with her phone, taking photos of the family gathered in the living room, the elegant table setting, and candid shots of Marcus looking successful and confident. She would later post these images to her Instagram account, with captions about family traditions and gratitude, carefully curating an image of domestic perfection for her thousands of followers. As we moved to the dining room for dinner, I noticed the seating arrangement placed Marcus at my mother's right hand, the position of honor traditionally reserved for the most favored guest. I found myself seated between Uncle Tony and Derek, far enough from the center of attention to observe without being expected to contribute significantly to the conversation. The dining room itself reflected my mother's commitment to maintaining appearances. The mahogany table gleamed under the crystal chandelier set with her finest china and silver. Fresh flowers from her garden created an elegant centerpiece, and the walls displayed family photos that chronicled decades of holidays, graduations, and special occasions. Everything was perfectly arranged to create an atmosphere of prosperity and refinement. Patricia served dinner with obvious pride, describing each dish and its preparation in detail. The roast beef had been seasoned with herbs from her garden and cooked to perfection. The mashed potatoes were made with real butter and cream, the green beans were fresh rather than frozen, and the dinner rolls were homemade rather than store-bought. Every element of the meal demonstrated her commitment to excellence and her desire to impress her family. As we began eating, Marcus launched into a detailed description of his recent promotion and the additional responsibilities it entailed. He spoke about managing larger accounts, traveling to more prestigious locations, and earning bonuses that exceeded my annual salary. Patricia listened with rapt attention, asking follow-up questions that allowed him to elaborate on his success in increasingly grandiose terms. The conversation took a particularly painful turn when Patricia began comparing my living situation to Marcus's achievements. She mentioned visiting friends whose adult children owned homes, started families, and demonstrated clear signs of upward mobility. Her tone suggested disappointment and confusion about my apparent lack of ambition or drive to achieve similar milestones. Marcus, sensing an opportunity to reinforce his position as the favored son, offered to help me understand real estate investment and financial planning. His condescending tone and patronizing suggestions made it clear that he viewed me as someone who needed guidance rather than someone who possessed expertise in these areas. Jessica nodded supportively, adding her own observations about the importance of setting ambitious goals and working toward material success. The climactic moment arrived during dessert when Marcus casually mentioned his plans to purchase a second property, perhaps a vacation home in Aspen, where he and Jessica could escape during ski season. The suggestion was delivered with the nonchalant confidence of someone accustomed to making expensive purchases without serious consideration of the financial implications. Patricia's eyes lit up with excitement as she processed this information. Her younger son was not content with simply owning one piece of luxury real estate. He was already planning to expand his portfolio with recreational property in one of Colorado's most exclusive mountain towns. The pride in her voice was unmistakable as she began planning how she would share this news with her social circle. Then she turned to me with that particular expression I had learned to dread over the years. Her smile faded slightly, replaced by a look of maternal disappointment mixed with genuine bewilderment. The entire table fell silent, as everyone sensed the shift in atmosphere the moment when Patricia would voice the comparison that had been building throughout the evening. Her words cut through the silence with surgical precision. "Lawrence, when are you going to stop making excuses and actually accomplish something with your life? Your younger brother is leaving you in the dust, and frankly, I'm running out of ways to explain your situation when people ask about both my sons." The laughter that followed felt like a physical blow. Uncle Tony chuckled and shook his head. The twins giggled behind their hands, and Derek smiled with the superiority of someone who had never experienced such public humiliation. Marcus's smirk widened as he watched me absorb the full impact of our mother's words, while Jessica documented the moment with a subtle photo that would probably never make it to social media, but would certainly be shared privately among her friends. The aftermath of my mother's declaration settled over the dining room like a heavy blanket, but instead of awkward silence, it triggered an enthusiastic discussion about Marcus's supposed real estate empire. Patricia, energized by the opportunity to showcase her successful son, encouraged Marcus to describe his penthouse in elaborate detail for the benefit of our relatives who had not yet seen it. Marcus rose to the occasion with practiced showmanship, painting a picture of luxury that captivated his audience. He described floor-to-ceiling windows that offered panoramic views of downtown Denver's skyline, particularly stunning at sunset, when the Rocky Mountains created a dramatic backdrop. The living room featured an open concept design with imported Italian marble flooring that reflected the natural light streaming through the massive windows. The kitchen, according to Marcus, was a masterpiece of modern design, featuring granite countertops imported from Brazil, stainless steel appliances that belonged in a professional restaurant, and custom cabinets crafted from reclaimed hardwood. He mentioned a wine refrigerator stocked with vintage bottles, a coffee station equipped with an espresso machine that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and a kitchen island large enough to host dinner parties for 12 guests. Jessica eagerly produced her phone to provide visual evidence of these claims, scrolling through dozens of professionally styled photographs that showcased every angle of the penthouse's interior. The family passed her phone around the table like a sacred artifact, each person offering impressed comments about the luxurious furnishings and sophisticated design choices. The master bedroom, Marcus explained, featured a walk-in closet larger than most studio apartments, with custom built-in organizers for his collection of designer suits and Jessica's extensive wardrobe. The ensuite bathroom included a soaking tub carved from a single block of marble, a steam shower with multiple jets and heated floors that eliminated the shock of cold tile on winter mornings. But the crown jewel of the property was the rooftop terrace accessible through sliding glass doors from the main living area. Marcus described outdoor furniture that cost more than most people's cars, a hot tub, positioned to take advantage of the mountain views, and a built-in barbecue area perfect for entertaining clients and friends. String lights and carefully positioned planters created an atmosphere that was both sophisticated and welcoming. Patricia absorbed every detail with obvious pride, already planning how she would incorporate these descriptions into conversations with her book club bridge partners and country club acquaintances. She had spent years deflecting questions about her children's achievements, but now she possessed material that would establish her family's status beyond any doubt. Uncle Tony expressed amazement at the smart home technology that Marcus claimed to control everything from lighting and temperature to security and entertainment systems through voice commands and smartphone apps. The twins were particularly impressed by descriptions of a home theater with surround sound and a projection screen that descended from the ceiling at the touch of a button. Derek, ever practical, despite his youth, asked detailed questions about the building's amenities and location. Marcus described a 24-hour concierge service, a fitness center equipped with the latest exercise equipment, and underground parking that protected residents' vehicles from Colorado's unpredictable weather. The building's location in the heart of downtown Denver meant that fine dining, cultural events, and business meetings were all within walking distance. Sandra, always interested in domestic details, wanted to know about storage space and practical considerations for daily living. Marcus assured her that the penthouse included ample closet space, a dedicated home office with built-in shelving, and a utility room with high-end laundry appliances that made household chores feel less like work and more like luxury experiences. As the descriptions continued, Patricia became increasingly animated, recounting conversations where she had mentioned Marcus's success to neighbors and former colleagues. She described the envy in other mothers' voices when they heard about the penthouse, the way conversations shifted when she mentioned her son's real estate investments, and the subtle social elevation she experienced as the mother of such a successful young man. The family's attention remained focused entirely on Marcus, as he fielded questions about property values, neighborhood demographics, and future development plans for the downtown area. He spoke with apparent authority about real estate trends, market fluctuations, and investment strategies that would impress anyone unfamiliar with the actual complexities of property ownership. I sat quietly throughout this performance, occasionally asked perfunctory questions about my own living situation that served mainly to highlight the contrast between my modest circumstances and Marcus's apparent prosperity. When Patricia mentioned my one-bedroom apartment, she used the tone typically reserved for discussing unfortunate medical conditions or embarrassing family secrets. The comparison became more explicit when Uncle Tony asked why I didn't follow Marcus's example and invest in real estate rather than continuing to rent. Patricia seized this opportunity to express her bewilderment about my life choices, wondering aloud why I seemed content with mediocrity when my younger brother demonstrated such obvious ambition and success. Marcus, sensing the perfect moment to reinforce his superior position, offered to help me understand real estate investment and financial planning. He suggested that I lacked the confidence and vision necessary for major purchases, but assured everyone that he would be willing to mentor me if I demonstrated genuine interest in improving my circumstances. Jessica contributed her own observations about the importance of setting ambitious goals and surrounding oneself with successful people who could provide inspiration and guidance. She mentioned several of her social media followers who had transformed their lives by adopting more aggressive approaches to wealth building and status acquisition. The conversation took an even more painful direction when Patricia began describing specific interactions with her social circle, where my apparent lack of achievement had become a source of embarrassment. She mentioned book club meetings, where other mothers bragged about their children's accomplishments, while she struggled to find positive things to say about my career and lifestyle choices. Bridge games became particularly difficult, according to Patricia, because the other women competed to share news about their sons and daughter's major life milestones. Home purchases, promotions, engagements, and exotic vacations were common topics of conversation. But Patricia felt excluded from these discussions because my achievements seemed insignificant by comparison. Country club events presented similar challenges, especially when conversations turned to real estate values and property investments. Patricia had learned to change the subject or excuse herself from discussions where she could not contribute stories about her children's success in these areas. As dessert plates were cleared and coffee was served, the family's focus remained fixed on Marcus and his apparent mastery of adult life. Patricia had produced photo albums from previous visits to the penthouse, showing the family gathered in various rooms that showcased the luxury and sophistication of the property. The climactic moment of this section arrived when Jessica accidentally revealed a detail that didn't quite fit the narrative Marcus had been constructing. While showing photos of the rooftop terrace, she mentioned their recent frustration with building management over new regulations regarding noise levels and guest access during evening hours. Her comment was casual and brief, intended as a minor complaint about the challenges of living in a high-end building with strict rules. But Marcus's reaction was immediate and telling. His confident demeanor faltered for just a moment, and he quickly steered the conversation away from building management issues toward more flattering topics about the penthouse's amenities and location. When I asked a follow-up question about property management fees and homeowner association regulations, Marcus provided vague and evasive answers that seemed inconsistent with his earlier detailed descriptions. His responses lacked the specificity and confidence that characterized his previous explanations about the penthouse's features and his supposed real estate expertise. The discrepancy was subtle enough that most family members didn't notice. But my professional experience analyzing real estate transactions had taught me to recognize when someone was improvising rather than drawing from personal knowledge. Marcus's sudden discomfort when discussing the practical aspects of property ownership suggested that his familiarity with the penthouse might not be as comprehensive as he wanted everyone to believe. While my family continued their enthusiastic celebration of Marcus's achievements, I began paying closer attention to the subtle inconsistencies in his responses and the details that didn't quite align with genuine property ownership. My professional experience analyzing commercial real estate had given me a thorough understanding of the complexities involved in purchasing financing and maintaining luxury properties, and several aspects of Marcus's story raised questions that demanded careful consideration. When Uncle Tony asked about the down payment and financing arrangements for such an expensive property, Marcus deflected with humor rather than providing specific information. He joked about the complexities of real estate financing and suggested that such details were too boring for dinner conversation, but his evasiveness seemed unusual for someone who had recently completed a major property transaction. Derek, displaying the analytical mindset that had served him well in law school, asked about closing costs and legal fees associated with the purchase. Marcus's response was suspiciously generic, mentioning standard fees and typical closing procedures without demonstrating the detailed knowledge that any recent homebuyer would possess about these expensive and complex processes. The twins, uninterested in financial details, but curious about practical matters, asked about moving expenses and the logistics of furnishing such a large space. Marcus's answers lacked the specific memories and personal anecdotes that typically accompany major life transitions like purchasing a first home and relocating to a luxury property. As someone who had analyzed dozens of high-end real estate transactions through my work, I knew that property owners typically remembered vivid details about their purchase experience. The stress and excitement of securing financing, negotiating terms, conducting inspections, and completing the closing process created lasting memories that owners enjoyed sharing with family and friends. Marcus's reluctance to discuss these aspects of homeownership suggested either an unusual lack of interest in his own major life achievement or unfamiliarity with the actual processes involved in purchasing real estate. His comfort level decreased noticeably whenever conversations moved from describing the property's amenities to discussing the business and legal aspects of ownership. I reflected on my own expertise in commercial property analysis, thinking about the hundreds of residential transactions I had reviewed as comparable sales for various projects. High-end condominiums in downtown Denver typically required substantial down payments, excellent credit scores, and comprehensive financial documentation that took weeks or months to assemble and verify. The timeline Marcus had suggested for his purchase seemed compressed compared to the reality of luxury real estate transactions. Securing financing for multi-million-dollar properties involved extensive underwriting processes, property appraisals, and legal reviews that rarely concluded as quickly as Marcus had implied. Patricia, oblivious to these technical concerns, shifted the conversation toward planning future family gatherings at the Penthouse. She expressed excitement about hosting Christmas dinner in such elegant surroundings and suggested that Marcus's rooftop terrace would be perfect for summer barbecues and birthday celebrations. Marcus responded to these suggestions with notable hesitation, agreeing in principle, but raising concerns about scheduling conflicts and the building's policies regarding large gatherings. His wife Jessica appeared increasingly uncomfortable as Patricia's plans became more specific and detailed. When Patricia asked about guest parking availability and overnight accommodations for out-of-town relatives, Marcus provided vague responses that suggested unfamiliarity with his building's amenities and policies. Property owners typically knew these details intimately because they affected daily life and social planning. I excused myself to use the bathroom partially to escape the increasingly uncomfortable conversation, and partially to process the inconsistencies I was observing. As I walked down the hallway toward the guest bathroom, I overheard Marcus having a hushed phone conversation near the kitchen. His voice was tense and worried as he spoke to someone about monthly payments and the importance of keeping up appearances for family and professional reasons. He mentioned someone named Mr. Rodriguez who owns the building, and the need to maintain the arrangement without attracting attention or questions. The conversation ended abruptly when Marcus noticed me approaching. He quickly ended the call and returned to the dining room with a forced smile, but his demeanor had shifted from confident showmanship to barely concealed anxiety. When I returned to my seat, I found Patricia showing the family a real estate listing she had discovered on her phone for a similar penthouse in Marcus's building that had recently sold for $2.8 million. Her excitement was palpable as she calculated the potential equity Marcus must have accumulated and the impressive net worth this represented. Patricia began planning how she would share this information with her country club friends, particularly Margaret Thompson, the wealthiest woman in their social circle, whose approval Patricia had sought for decades. The opportunity to casually mention her son's multi-million-dollar real estate investment would elevate her status and provide years of social capital. However, the numbers Patricia was discussing didn't align with Marcus's previous implications about his purchase timeline and financial situation. Based on his salary and the timeline he had suggested, the down payment alone would have required savings that seemed inconsistent with his lifestyle and spending patterns. My own analysis of downtown Denver's luxury real estate market suggested that properties in Marcus's supposed price range typically required down payments of 20 to 30%, representing hundreds of thousands of dollars in liquid assets. The monthly mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, and homeowner association fees would consume a significant portion of even a high-earning professional's income. Marcus's visible discomfort increased as Patricia's calculations became more specific and her social plans more elaborate. Jessica checked her phone repeatedly, appearing to text someone urgently while trying to remain inconspicuous about her communication. The family's enthusiasm continued building as they imagined future celebrations and gatherings at the Penthouse, but Marcus's responses became increasingly strained. He agreed to hosting plans while simultaneously creating potential obstacles and complications that might prevent their implementation. Sandra, ever practical in her approach to family logistics, asked about the building's policies regarding children and pets, since Emma and Grace would want to visit and bring their friends. Marcus's uncertainty about basic building policies raised additional questions about his familiarity with the property and its management structure. Uncle Tony, inspired by Marcus's apparent success, began discussing his own retirement planning and real estate investments. He asked for Marcus's advice about property selection, financing options, and market timing, treating him as an expert whose guidance could help navigate complex financial decisions. Marcus's discomfort reached a visible peak when Tony suggested that they schedule a meeting to review investment strategies and property portfolios. The prospect of providing detailed financial advice to a family member who might ask probing questions about his expertise and experience clearly made Marcus extremely nervous. The climactic moment of this section occurred when Patricia announced that she had already made preliminary inquiries about catering services for her planned book club tour of the Penthouse. She had contacted her preferred caterer and requested availability for the following Saturday, pending confirmation of the date, with Marcus and Jessica. Patricia's announcement revealed that she had moved beyond casual planning to taking concrete steps toward organizing an event that would showcase Marcus's property to her social circle. She had committed time and effort to arrangements that assumed Marcus's full cooperation and access to the Penthouse. The room fell silent as the implications of Patricia's announcement became clear. Marcus could no longer treat the family's interest in visiting the Penthouse as abstract future planning. Patricia had created expectations and commitments that required immediate response and concrete arrangements. Jessica's face reflected panic as she realized that Patricia's enthusiasm had created obligations they could not fulfill. Marcus appeared trapped between his need to maintain his deceptive narrative and the practical impossibility of delivering on his mother's specific plans and expectations. The dining room atmosphere shifted dramatically as Patricia's announcement about the catering arrangements transformed abstract family plans into immediate practical obligations. Her enthusiasm had created a cascade of commitments that required Marcus to either deliver on his claims about the Penthouse or find a way to postpone indefinitely without arousing suspicion about his actual living situation. Patricia's excitement reached new heights as she described the elaborate event she had already begun organizing. She had contacted Eleanor Morrison, the most exclusive caterer in their social circle, known for serving the country club's most prestigious functions. Eleanor's availability for the following Saturday had been confirmed, pending final guest count and menu selections. The guest list Patricia had assembled represented the pinnacle of her social ambitions. Margaret Thompson, the pharmaceutical heiress, whose approval Patricia had sought for decades, had already expressed interest in touring a downtown penthouse. Dorothy Sinclair, whose husband owned the largest law firm in Denver, had adjusted her schedule to accommodate the event. Linda Crawford, the bank president's wife, had specifically requested detailed information about the building's amenities and location. These women represented the social elite that Patricia had aspired to join throughout her adult life. The opportunity to showcase her son's luxury real estate investment would establish her credentials as the mother of a genuinely successful young man, rather than someone who merely pretended to prosperity. Patricia had also invited several members of her book club bridge partners from the country club and neighbors whose own children's achievements she had envied for years. The event would provide her with the social validation she had craved, while simultaneously demonstrating that her family deserved respect and recognition within their community. Marcus listened to these detailed plans with growing horror, realizing that his mother's enthusiasm had created obligations he could not fulfill without exposing the deception that had defined his public persona for the past 18 months. His face grew pale as Patricia described the specific arrangements she had made, and the expectations she had created among her friends. Jessica appeared equally terrified as she processed the implications of Patricia's announcements. Her own social media presence depended partly on the luxury lifestyle she portrayed through carefully curated images of the penthouse. The exposure of Marcus's deception would undermine her credibility and potentially damage her influencer career. Derek, displaying the analytical skills that made him successful in law school, began asking practical questions about the logistics of hosting such an elaborate event. He inquired about parking arrangements, building security procedures, and capacity limitations for the penthouse's entertaining spaces. Marcus's responses became increasingly evasive and contradictory as he attempted to address Derek's questions without providing information that could be verified or challenged. His claimed unfamiliarity with building policies and procedures became more difficult to explain as the discussion continued. Uncle Tony, excited about the prospect of seeing his nephew's luxury property, offered to help coordinate the event and provide additional entertainment options. He suggested hiring a pianist for background music and arranging for professional photographers to document the occasion for posterity. Sandra volunteered to assist with decorations and table settings, drawing on her experience organizing school events and fundraisers. Her practical suggestions about flower arrangements, lighting, and guest flow demonstrated genuine enthusiasm for supporting Patricia's social triumph. The twins, initially uninterested in adult dinner parties, became excited when they realized the event would provide content for their social media accounts. They requested permission to bring friends and document the penthouse tour for their Instagram stories, viewing the gathering as an opportunity to enhance their own social status among their peers. Patricia's plans extended beyond the immediate event to encompass a broader strategy for leveraging Marcus's apparent success into long-term social advancement. She described future dinner parties, holiday celebrations, and business entertaining opportunities that would cement her family's position within Denver's elite social circles. The conversation's momentum became unstoppable as family members contributed ideas and offered assistance for various aspects of the planned celebration. Each suggestion created additional expectations and obligations that Marcus would be unable to fulfill without admitting the truth about his actual living situation. Marcus attempted to slow the planning process by raising concerns about timing and scheduling conflicts, but Patricia dismissed these objections as unnecessary modesty. She insisted that such an important family milestone deserved proper recognition and celebration regardless of minor inconveniences. The pressure intensified when Patricia announced that she had already purchased a new outfit specifically for the occasion and had scheduled a hair appointment at the most expensive salon in town. Her investments in personal preparation demonstrated the importance she placed on making the best possible impression during this social opportunity. Jessica's attempts to support Marcus's scheduling objections only increased suspicion among family members who noticed her obvious anxiety and frequent phone checking. Her behavior suggested awareness of complications that she was reluctant to discuss openly. The climactic moment arrived when Patricia revealed the most significant commitment she had made without consulting Marcus or Jessica. She announced that she had already sent formal invitations to 12 of her closest friends, complete with detailed descriptions of the penthouse's amenities and promises of an exclusive tour of one of downtown Denver's most luxurious properties. These invitations had been sent via both email and traditional mail, ensuring that Patricia's entire social circle knew about the event and her son's apparent real estate success. The formal nature of the invitations made cancellation or postponement extremely difficult without providing explanations that would invite uncomfortable questions. Patricia had included specific details in her invitations about the penthouse's square footage, amenities, and architectural features, drawing from Marcus's previous descriptions and Jessica's social media posts. Any significant discrepancies between her promises and the actual event would be immediately obvious to guests who had received detailed advance information. The financial commitments Patricia had made included deposits for catering services, flower arrangements, and professional cleaning services to ensure the penthouse looked perfect for the tour. She had also arranged for valet parking to handle the luxury vehicles her guests would drive to the event. Marcus realized that his mother's enthusiasm had created a situation where exposure of his deception was virtually inevitable. The specific commitments she had made required access to the penthouse and cooperation from building management that he could not provide without revealing his actual status as a renter rather than an owner. The family's excitement reached fever pitch as they imagined the social triumph this event would represent for Patricia and the reflected glory they would all share as relatives of such a successful young man. Their enthusiasm made the truth about Marcus's situation seem even more devastating and humiliating. Jessica excused herself from the table, claiming the need to make an urgent phone call, but her distress was obvious to everyone present. Her departure left Marcus alone to face increasingly specific questions about arrangements and logistics that he could not answer without exposing his lies. The final blow came when Patricia announced that Margaret Thompson had specifically requested a private conversation with Marcus about real estate investment strategies. Margaret's own property portfolio included several luxury condominiums, and she wanted professional advice from someone with recent experience purchasing downtown real estate. Patricia's pride in arranging this meeting between her son and the most respected woman in their social circle demonstrated her complete faith in Marcus's expertise and success. The planned conversation would require Marcus to demonstrate knowledge and experience he simply did not possess. The weight of Patricia's commitments and expectations created an atmosphere of barely controlled panic that I could observe in both Marcus and Jessica's increasingly desperate attempts to maintain their composure while processing the impossibility of their situation. The elaborate social event Patricia had orchestrated would require cooperation and access that Marcus simply could not provide without destroying the carefully constructed facade he had maintained for 18 months. I excused myself from the table under the pretense of needing to retrieve some work documents from my car, but my actual purpose was to gather the evidence that would finally expose the truth about Marcus's living situation and put an end to the deception that had humiliated me throughout countless family gatherings. Walking to my Toyota in the driveway, I reflected on the 18 months of subtle hints and inconsistencies that had gradually revealed the reality behind Marcus's claims of real estate ownership. My professional experience in commercial property analysis had provided me with the knowledge necessary to recognize the gaps in his story, but I had initially chosen to remain silent out of family loyalty and personal privacy. From my briefcase in the car's trunk, I retrieved a manila folder containing documents that would forever change the dynamics of our family relationships. The papers represented not just evidence of Marcus's deception, but also proof of my own financial success and the generosity I had shown toward a brother who had repeatedly humiliated me in front of our relatives. Returning to the dining room, I found the family deep in discussion about catering options and entertainment possibilities for Patricia's planned book club tour. The conversation had evolved beyond mere planning to detailed coordination of an event that would showcase Marcus's supposed property to Denver's social elite. Patricia had produced a notebook and was taking detailed notes about guest preferences, dietary restrictions, and special requests that would need to be accommodated during the tour. Her organizational skills, honed through years of managing real estate, open houses, and social events, were being applied to create an unforgettable experience for her friends. The menu planning alone had become an elaborate undertaking with Patricia, considering multiple courses, wine pairings, and elegant presentation options that would demonstrate her family's sophistication and success. She discussed hiring additional serving staff to ensure that every detail met the high standards expected by her distinguished guests. Marcus sat in increasingly obvious distress as the planning continued, unable to stop the momentum without providing explanations that would expose his deception. His attempts to raise scheduling conflicts and logistical concerns were dismissed by Patricia as minor obstacles that could be overcome through proper organization and determination. Jessica's frequent phone checking and obvious anxiety had begun to attract attention from other family members, though they interpreted her behavior as excitement about hosting such an important social event, rather than panic about the impossibility of fulfilling Patricia's expectations. I calmly returned to my seat and listened as Patricia described the specific arrangements she had made with various service providers. Eleanor Morrison's catering company required 48 hours advance notice for menu finalization and staff scheduling. The flower arrangements needed to be coordinated with the building's delivery procedures. The professional cleaning service required building access and security clearance. Each detail Patricia mentioned created additional complications for Marcus and Jessica, who would need to coordinate with building management they did not control and provide access to a property they did not own. Their growing desperation became more obvious as the practical requirements of Patricia's plans became clear. Derek, maintaining his practical focus on logistics, asked about building insurance and liability coverage for events involving multiple guests and catering services. His questions reflected the legal training that had taught him to consider potential complications and risk factors that others might overlook. Marcus's inability to provide specific information about insurance coverage and building policies became increasingly difficult to explain as someone who supposedly owned the property and should be familiar with all aspects of building management and homeowner responsibilities. Uncle Tony's enthusiasm for the event led him to volunteer additional resources and support services that would further complicate the situation. He offered to coordinate with building security to ensure smooth access for all service providers and guests requiring cooperation from building management that Marcus could not arrange. Sandra's domestic expertise prompted detailed questions about kitchen facilities, serving areas, and guest accommodation that revealed Marcus's unfamiliarity with the practical aspects of entertaining in the supposed penthouse. Property owners typically knew these details intimately because they affected daily life and social planning. The twins' excitement about documenting the event for their social media accounts created additional pressure for Marcus and Jessica, who would need to maintain their deception under the scrutiny of teenage social media users who might notice and comment on any inconsistencies or unusual circumstances. Patricia's pride in her son's achievements had reached such heights that she began planning future events and social opportunities that would leverage the Penthouse's prestige for ongoing family benefit. Her vision extended far beyond the immediate book club tour to encompass years of elevated social status based on Marcus's apparent success. The conversation's intensity increased when Patricia announced that several of her invited guests had specifically requested to discuss real estate investment opportunities with Marcus during the tour. These women controlled substantial family wealth and viewed him as a potential source of professional advice and market insights. Margaret Thompson's interest in real estate investment strategies had prompted her to prepare specific questions about market timing, property selection, and financing options that she planned to discuss with Marcus during their private conversation. Her expectations reflected her assumption that Marcus possessed genuine expertise and recent experience in luxury property acquisition. Dorothy Sinclair had indicated her desire to explore downtown condominium options for her recently divorced daughter and expected Marcus to provide guidance about available properties, building amenities, and neighborhood characteristics. Her confidence in his knowledge demonstrated Patricia's successful promotion of his supposed real estate expertise. Linda Crawford's husband had expressed interest in diversifying their investment portfolio to include residential real estate, and Linda planned to arrange a future meeting between her husband and Marcus to discuss potential opportunities and strategies. These professional consultations would require Marcus to demonstrate knowledge and experience he simply did not possess. The climactic revelation came when Patricia announced that she had already made a down payment to Eleanor Morrison's catering company and sent formal invitations to 12 of her closest friends for the following Saturday's tour of Marcus's Penthouse. The financial and social commitments she had made without consulting Marcus or Jessica created obligations that could not be canceled or postponed without devastating social consequences. Patricia's down payment represented a significant financial investment in an event that Marcus could not deliver, while her formal invitations had created expectations among Denver's social elite that could not be disappointed without permanently damaging her reputation and social standing. The invitations themselves contained specific promises about the Penthouse tour, including detailed descriptions of the property's amenities and architectural features that Patricia had gathered from Marcus's previous claims and Jessica's social media posts. Any significant discrepancies would be immediately obvious to guests who had received advance information. Marcus's face reflected the full horror of his situation, as he realized that his mother's enthusiasm had created a trap from which escape was impossible without confessing the truth about his deception. The specific financial and social commitments Patricia had made required immediate action that would expose his lies within days. Jessica's distress became impossible to hide as she processed the timeline Patricia had established and the practical impossibility of fulfilling her expectations. Her own social media credibility depended on maintaining the luxury lifestyle narrative that was about to be exposed as fraudulent. The family's excitement and anticipation created a stark contrast to Marcus and Jessica's obvious panic, setting the stage for revelations that would permanently alter our family dynamics and social relationships. The truth could no longer remain hidden when Patricia's commitments demanded immediate cooperation and access that Marcus simply could not provide. I opened my manila folder and carefully placed its contents on the mahogany table, watching as my family's animated conversation about Marcus's supposed success gradually faded into confused silence. The official documents with their embossed seals and legal letterheads created an atmosphere of serious business that commanded immediate attention from everyone present. Patricia looked puzzled as she examined the papers scattered across her elegant table setting, recognizing the formal appearance of legal documents without immediately understanding their significance. Uncle Tony leaned forward to get a better view, while Derek's legal training prompted him to study the documents more carefully than the other family members. I had remained silent throughout 18 months of humiliation and condescension, watching Marcus build his reputation on lies while accepting my family's disappointment in my supposedly modest achievements. But Patricia's elaborate plans for showcasing the Penthouse to her social circle had created a situation where continued silence would result in devastating embarrassment for my mother and exposure of Marcus's deception in the most public and humiliating way possible. My voice was calm and steady as I began explaining the true story behind Marcus's apparent real estate success, a story that would forever change our family's understanding of which son had actually achieved financial success and which had been living a carefully constructed lie. 3 years ago, I had purchased the downtown penthouse that Marcus claimed to own as part of a diversified real estate investment portfolio I had been building through my work in commercial property analysis. The deed which I placed directly in front of Patricia clearly showed my name as the sole legal owner of the property that had become the centerpiece of Marcus's fabricated success story. The family stared at the document in stunned confusion, unable to immediately process the implications of seeing my name where they expected to see Marcus's. Patricia picked up the deed with trembling hands, examining the official seals and signatures that confirmed the authenticity of my ownership claim. I continued my explanation, describing how 18 months ago, Marcus had approached me privately with a desperate request for help. He needed to impress Jessica's wealthy parents during their first meeting and wanted to propose marriage in a setting that would demonstrate his financial stability and professional success. The rental agreement I placed on the table documented the arrangement Marcus and I had made, showing his signature on a month-to-month lease that granted him access to the penthouse in exchange for payments significantly below market rate. My decision to help my brother had been motivated by family loyalty and genuine desire to support his relationship with Jessica. The rental payments documented through 18 months of bank records and canceled checks showed a consistent pattern of $4,000 monthly payments from Marcus to me for a property that would typically rent for $7,000 in the current downtown market. My generosity had saved Marcus over $50,000 in rental costs while enabling him to maintain his deceptive lifestyle. Text message conversations between Marcus and me, printed and organized chronologically, revealed the ongoing nature of our arrangement and his repeated promises that the rental would be temporary until he could afford his own luxury property. The messages also documented various maintenance issues and building management communications that clearly identified me as the owner and Marcus as the tenant. The building management correspondence was particularly revealing, showing my name on all official communications regarding property taxes, homeowner association fees, insurance claims, and maintenance scheduling. Marcus's name appeared only on the approved tenant list and emergency contact information that I had provided to building security. Uncle Tony was the first to break the silence, asking why I had never corrected the family's assumptions about Marcus's property ownership. I explained that I valued financial privacy over public recognition and had assumed Marcus would eventually clarify the situation when he moved to his own property as originally planned. Derek, applying his legal training to analyze the documentation, confirmed that the papers clearly established my ownership of the property and Marcus's status as a subsidized tenant. His professional assessment carried weight with family members who might otherwise question the authenticity of my claims. Patricia struggled to process the information, repeatedly examining the deed and rental agreement, while glancing between Marcus and me with growing understanding of how thoroughly she had misunderstood her son's actual circumstances. Her pride in Marcus's achievements was being replaced by shock at the extent of his deception. Jessica's face reflected pure horror as she realized that her entire social media presence and public persona were built on a foundation of lies about their living situation. Her carefully curated lifestyle content would become evidence of fraud if the truth about their rental arrangement became public knowledge. Sandra asked the practical question that was troubling everyone: how long had Marcus been misleading the family about owning the penthouse when he was actually renting it from his brother at below-market rates? The timeline I provided showed that every family gathering for the past 18 months had featured celebrations of achievements that belonged to me rather than Marcus. The twins, initially confused by the adult financial complexities being discussed, began to understand that their uncle Marcus had been lying about his success, while their uncle Lawrence had been quietly paying for the luxury lifestyle they had admired and envied. Marcus finally attempted to speak, trying to justify his deception by explaining that he needed to maintain his professional reputation in sales because clients expected their representatives to demonstrate personal success. I responded that genuine success didn't require deception or family subsidies to maintain appearances. The most shocking revelation came when I presented the recent email correspondence between Marcus and myself, where he had begged me not to sell the penthouse because his entire professional and social identity depended on people believing he owned luxury real estate. His reputation among colleagues, clients, Jessica's family, and our own relatives was built entirely on a lie that required my continued cooperation to maintain. Marcus had specifically requested that I avoid mentioning my property ownership to family members because exposure of the truth would destroy the credibility he had built in his sales career. His clients trusted him, partly because they believed he had personal experience with major real estate investments and luxury lifestyle choices. The email chain also revealed Marcus's mounting anxiety about the arrangement's sustainability and his fear that I might end the subsidized rental or reveal the truth to our family. His dependence on my financial support and discretion had become a source of constant stress that affected his relationship with Jessica and his performance at work. Patricia's shock deepened as she realized that every conversation where she had bragged about Marcus's penthouse ownership had been based on lies, while her supposedly unsuccessful son actually owned the property she had been describing to her friends. Her social credibility would be destroyed if the truth became known among her bridge partners and country club acquaintances. The family's understanding of our relative success and failure had been completely inverted. Marcus, whom they had celebrated as the accomplished son, was actually a subsidized tenant living beyond his means with his brother's financial support. I, whom they had pitied as the underachiever, was actually the property owner who had been quietly enabling Marcus's deception out of family loyalty. Uncle Tony expressed amazement that I had maintained such discretion about my actual financial situation while enduring 18 months of unfavorable comparisons to Marcus's apparent success. My willingness to accept humiliation rather than expose my brother's lies demonstrated a level of family loyalty that impressed everyone present. The climactic moment arrived when I addressed Patricia's elaborate plans for the book club tour, explaining that she could still host the event since I actually owned the property, but she would need to be honest with her guests about the real ownership situation. The revelation that her social triumph could proceed but only with truthful information created a complex emotional situation for my mother. I also informed Marcus that our rental arrangement would need to transition to market rate payments going forward, since I could no longer subsidize his deception now that the family knew the truth. His financial dependence on my generosity would end forcing him to find housing he could actually afford or negotiate a legitimate rental agreement at fair market value. The room fell into stunned silence as everyone processed the complete reversal of everything they had believed about Marcus's success and my apparent failure. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, leaving no possibility that I was exaggerating or misrepresenting the situation for personal gain. The silence that followed my revelations seemed to stretch for an eternity, as my family struggled to process the complete inversion of everything they had believed about Marcus's success and my supposed failures. The carefully constructed narrative that had defined our family dynamics for 18 months had crumbled in the space of a few minutes, leaving everyone to recalibrate their understanding of which son had actually achieved financial success. Patricia was the first to find her voice, though it was barely above a whisper, as she apologized for the harsh words and unfavorable comparisons she had made throughout the past year and a half. Her face showed genuine remorse as she realized that every criticism of my life choices and every celebration of Marcus's achievements had been based on a fundamental misunderstanding of our actual circumstances. The weight of her mistake seemed to physically diminish her as she acknowledged the pain her words had caused and the injustice of celebrating one son for accomplishments that actually belonged to the other. Her pride in Marcus's supposed real estate success had blinded her to the possibility that her supposedly unsuccessful son might be the one with genuine financial achievements. Marcus attempted one final justification for his deception, explaining that his sales career required him to project success and confidence to clients who expected their financial advisors to demonstrate personal prosperity. His argument fell flat, as Derek pointed out that professional success built on lies was inherently unstable and ethically questionable. Jessica remained silent throughout this exchange, apparently calculating the damage to her social media presence and public persona if the truth about their living situation became widely known. Her influencer career depended partly on the luxury lifestyle she portrayed, and the revelation that it was subsidized by her husband's brother would undermine her credibility with followers and sponsors. Uncle Tony expressed genuine admiration for the discretion I had shown in maintaining Marcus's secret, despite the personal cost of enduring family criticism and disappointment. He acknowledged that protecting a family member's reputation at such personal expense demonstrated remarkable loyalty and maturity. Sandra, ever practical in her approach to family relationships, suggested that the most important outcome would be rebuilding trust and honest communication among all family members. She emphasized that the deception had harmed not just me, but also Marcus and Jessica, who had been living under constant pressure to maintain an unsustainable facade. The twins, initially confused by the complex financial arrangements and family dynamics, began to understand that their admiration for Marcus's lifestyle had been misplaced, while their Uncle Lawrence possessed the genuine success they had thought belonged to his brother. Their perspective on material success and personal achievement would be permanently altered by witnessing this reversal. Derek, applying his legal training to the ethical implications of the situation, observed that Marcus's deception had created potential professional liability if clients or colleagues had made business decisions based on his false claims about personal real estate investments. The consequences of his lies might extend far beyond family embarrassment to include career damage and professional sanctions. As the immediate shock of the revelations began to fade, I addressed the practical implications of the truth becoming known. Patricia could still host her planned book club tour of the Penthouse, but she would need to explain the actual ownership situation to her guests. The event could proceed with honest information rather than the fabricated success story she had been planning to showcase. The catering arrangements, flower orders, and other preparations Patricia had made could continue as planned since I actually owned the property and could authorize the necessary building access and coordination with management. Her financial commitments would not be wasted, though the narrative surrounding the event would need to be completely revised. I informed Marcus that our rental arrangement would transition to fair market value going forward, bringing his monthly payments to $7,000 rather than the subsidized $4,000 he had been paying. This change would force him to either find housing he could genuinely afford or negotiate a legitimate business arrangement based on realistic financial terms. The end of the subsidized arrangement would also eliminate the ongoing deception that had corrupted his relationship with Jessica and created constant anxiety about maintaining appearances. Living within his actual means rather than beyond them with my financial support would provide a foundation for more honest personal and professional relationships. My decision to reveal the truth had been motivated by protecting Patricia from the social embarrassment that would have resulted from her elaborate book club tour. Her friends would have immediately recognized the deception when they met building management and discovered the real ownership situation, creating far more devastating consequences than the private family confrontation we were experiencing. As the evening drew toward its conclusion, I shared additional context about my financial situation that the family had never known. My modest lifestyle choices were deliberate decisions rather than limitations imposed by lack of success. I owned multiple properties beyond the downtown Penthouse, maintained substantial investment accounts, and had been planning a surprise that would demonstrate my genuine feelings toward my parents. The surprise I revealed was a plan to pay off the mortgage on my parents' family home as a gift for their upcoming 40th wedding anniversary. The gesture would eliminate their largest monthly expense during retirement and provide financial security during their golden years. My ability to make such a substantial gift demonstrated the true extent of my financial success. Robert, who had remained characteristically silent throughout most of the evening's drama, finally spoke to express his amazement at my generosity toward both Marcus and my parents. His quiet pride in my achievements was obvious, though he apologized for not recognizing my success earlier due to my preference for privacy over public recognition. The family's understanding of success and achievement underwent a fundamental transformation as they realized that genuine prosperity often chose discretion over display. My approach to wealth building prioritized substance over appearance, financial security over social recognition, and family loyalty over personal credit. Marcus's need for external validation had led him to construct an elaborate facade that ultimately became unsustainable and damaging to his relationships. His pursuit of perceived success had prevented him from achieving genuine accomplishments that would have earned legitimate family pride and personal satisfaction. As we prepared to end this transformative family gathering, I reflected on the lessons that had emerged from 18 months of deception and its ultimate exposure. Authentic relationships required honest communication, genuine success, provided its own satisfaction without external recognition. And family loyalty sometimes demanded difficult choices that prioritized others' welfare over personal credit. Patricia's newfound understanding of her son's actual circumstances would fundamentally change our family dynamics going forward. Her respect for my achievements, previously unknown to her, would replace the disappointment that had characterized our relationship. Similarly, her awareness of Marcus's deception would prompt more realistic expectations and honest conversations about his future goals. The evening's revelations would serve as a catalyst for more authentic family relationships based on truthful communication rather than carefully constructed appearances. Marcus would be forced to rebuild his reputation on genuine achievements rather than borrowed prestige, while I would receive recognition for accomplishments that had long remained hidden. The story concluded with a profound understanding that true success stems from personal integrity, financial wisdom, and genuine concern for family welfare rather than public recognition or social status. The painful process of exposing deception had ultimately strengthened our family bonds by establishing honesty as the foundation for future relationships. Have you ever had to choose between protecting someone you love and protecting yourself from their actions? How do you balance family loyalty with personal dignity when someone close to you takes credit for your achievements? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below about how you've handled similar situations in your own families. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more real-life stories about family dynamics and personal growth, and share this video with anyone who might benefit from understanding the importance of honest relationships. Thank you for joining me on this journey of discovering that true success often chooses discretion over display. And I wish you the courage to always choose authenticity over appearances in your own life.